Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Christ consciousness. Now, what we're going to discuss here is the dangers of radionics, something that I've covered in depth with All Access and Patreon. And of course, go to the upper right here, click and go to our Patreon, and of course All Access, so you can get much further and better information, get our courses, etc. This is kind of just a mini talk on the subject. Real information and in-depth information is in our new Radionic courses, etc. So do that and support the organization who is really doing something where every penny goes into development of better technologies. So one of the problems with radionics, or connecting with anybody, anything, and anybody, when you connect to them with your consciousness. So this means any kind of metaphysical psychic practice that you do, you are connecting to that energy stream. So one of the problems with radionic practitioners, no matter whom they are, and throughout history of tracking them, right up to modern times, is radionic practitioners generally don't live very long. This is quite shocking. And of course, a lot of practitioners in general. Hula Clark, the cure for all cancer person, died from cancer at 71 or 3. So her technology didn't work to eradicate cancer, even though it doesn't mean her work is terrible, but it does mean that there is a problem there. Radionic practitioners have all died in their 60s. Abrams, I believe, died in his late 60s from some sort of flu going through, or whatever it was that he was hit with, but obviously couldn't cure himself to the point that he died. Della Ward died young. They mostly died young. Ruth Drown lived to be in her early 70s. Again, that isn't very good. People have been living to their middle 80s for hundreds of years now, really. Most people have died from infections and other things that antibiotics have now solved. So if you're not making it to your middle 80s, well, you're not doing too good. Average life expectancy now internationally is about 80, and in the United States it's in the 70s, late 70s. This can be argued to some degree, but the bottom line is that's what you're looking at. But these radionic practitioners who think they could heal themselves have been unable to do it. Now, why is that? Galen Hieronymus lived to be 91 or 2, whatever the exact figure is, but he's the only one that I know of that have lived long. People like Peter Mosco, the head of the Psychotronic Association, died in his middle to late 60s. And we can go on and on. David Tansley, the famous author, I believe died in his 50s from cancer. So what is going on here? Well, there's a few things involved anytime that you are a person dealing with very potent energies, and that means you're dealing with the informational energetic fields. And anytime you make contact with anybody to send them good information or healing information, this could even be contacting somebody who needs help monetarily. And they are, what do they have? Well, they have a negative money energy. You could call this monetary disease. So the bottom line is when you do contact them, you're taking on their energy first. So what does that mean? It means the fact that you're sucking in negative energies. And these negative energies, you're now taking them into your reality. So if you're a very successful person, you're very positive, your energy will overcome something like negative financial energies. But to a degree, you're talking about taking on a curse, a cross condition, a disease again. And it doesn't have to be, quote, a traditional disease. And as a subtle energy physicist and those involved in radionics, our term disease is not like your common disease. You've got to remember, doctors work from the inside out, and subtle energy physicists work from the outside in. It's apples and oranges. While we may be working on the same structure to a degree, they're working on the physical. We're working on the non-physical, which is considered bogus, quackish nonsense. So the whole idea, let's understand that. So it's apples and oranges. They have nothing to do with it. Some of the terminology, for clarity, bumps into each other. And of course, it would be nice to eliminate this, but then you would sound like you're in some bad novel where they make up their own language. Isn't that what they did with Clockwork Orange? So these are things we need to understand. So there's always an etheric or energetic cleanliness that we all have to be careful of. Now, this is a serious issue no matter whom and what you're working on. So we all should be very attentive to this. So when you make a connection, the energy flows both ways. Now, we are developing technologies to stop entry into your machines in general, so you don't draw too much. But you got to remember the machines are the operator. You're the main energy involved in it. So you have to be very conscious that this is happening. Ideally, you need to keep a machine on yourself, clearing yourself out while you're working on others. So, and this is something you should be doing all the time. Our new curse removal protection machine, our uncrossing chakra third eye machine that are independent machines that will be out soon. Everyone needs to have. This is something when I do my actual energy readings, everybody has these problems and they have these negativities stuck to them and you need to release them. So, all of this is critically need to understand of how these energies work. And remember, anything that can heal can hurt. People think everything is just innocuous. It either works or it doesn't. Well, as I've mentioned in many lectures, it isn't true. If you take huge amounts of things that are basically good for you, you can turn them into bad for you. It is common for people to eat the same food all the time, and your body tends to reject it, and you actually become allergic to it. This is very common. So this can happen all the time, and nothing is innocuous. You take too much vitamin C, and it becomes toxic, if nothing else, to your kidneys and liver that have to process it. They have to kick it out. You think that's good for you? Think it's good for your kidneys to work overtime? Well, of course not. So, these are the things that are kind of ignored, and people don't know anything about this technology that is selling it to you, and you're getting a bunch of junk. So, the whole idea is be aware of this, and if you want to do radionics correctly, safely, and get the best results, well, take my course, plain and simple. Learn how to do it. Use proper tools that are that grab these energies completely, project them, etc. Buying inferior junk from con artists and the unfortunate but factual reality that most radionic tools are made by the Satanists, particularly in the United States, and they are heavily involved in this. This is something you need to be aware of. So, the leading orgone practitioner, Carl Wells, was a hardcore Satanist who basically everything he made had his satanic imprint on it. How nice. Now, using one of those machines? Well, you ought to take a hammer to it. So, the whole idea is this is a fact and a reality. So anytime you connect with someone, you're going to run into this particular problem and you're going to suck their energy into it. And sick people in general are vampires. Vampires will draw energy from you when you're sick, and that means everybody. So if you're around sick people, they are natural energy vampires. They are trying to heal themselves and they will take your energy. It's not a direct vampire, meaning they're concentrating on it to bring that. It's normal. It's part of being the human species. You try and draw energy from stronger people to assist yourself. And to a large extent, there's nothing wrong with that to a degree. But if you're around sick people all the time, 24/7, they're going to debilitate you. The other thing is that if you're treating people, friends, relatives, etc., and sending them positive or energies, regardless of what that is, and as I've mentioned, finances or anything else, they're going to send their bad financial energy to you. And if they have some sort of energetic, quote, disease, you're going to be sent that as well. So you have to make sure you're blocking that and clearing yourself, and that requires another machine. You should have one machine that works on yourself entirely, and then one you're using for others or even other situations. One of the problems with radionics, and we are designing machines where you can work on multiple things at one time, but basically they're just repetitions of the same machine, and they become bigger and more expensive. These are applicable to serious practitioners of this particular art form, and people that are really into this need to invest in one of the better machines that can do multiple treatments. Now, This is a critical situation so that you can, because you have certain problems. Everybody really has some sort of physical problem or will. Everybody has some sort of other problems. And even if you don't, you want to keep your success energies very high. Maybe you have relationship problems. Maybe you have problems with protection that you need, with negative energies around you. Well, this means you're going to have to work on several areas at one time. And generally, stopping and starting radionics in the long run is pretty bad. So that means you could need up to 4 or 5 machines. And of course, having a machine with being able to do this in general would be fantastic, and we are developing these. Again, it's just a matter of getting them into production. They are really ready to go, but it is difficult getting things from production to the public. But remember that you're having that problem. So if you send energy to someone, if you're working on them, and even it could, as I've mentioned, it could be as inane as success, love, even protection. If they're under attack by negative spirits, you're going to have drawing those spirits to you. So this is things that we teach our practitioners in our practitioner course as well. And that's another course we have developed and are working on so that people who do this for others, whether they're friends or as a profession, is something that you need to learn as well. Knowledge is power. You're not going to find people out there that have 40 years of experience like myself who would then pass it on, who are happy to do it, and you can access such a giant vault of fantastic, rare, proven information as you're going to get from Radionic Tech is the only organization really doing that. While we sell products, we are an educational organization as well. We have degrees. We teach people occult engineering. It's all of those type of things that you get from being part of this organization and its empowerment that we give to you as an individual, and you need to support that as well. And if you want to learn how to do things, well, do it right and get it from people that know, not some of these pretty unskilled people out there that really have no idea what they're doing, whether they've been around 50 years or 5 years. So taking on or working on somebody else means you're taking on their problem. This, again, is where the alchemical understanding, the old, quote, magical practices and radionics kind of all come together. Matter of fact, there's very little difference between, which is my original background, going through what would be traditional type magic of all sorts. Well, you're dealing with the same kind of energies. You're pulling in these particular type of energies and sending them out to a particular person, yourself, or others. You're generating energy fields. And we have a whole course on that called Traditional Sorcery, which talks about these alchemical vibrations, which we make into different formulas, which is just a type of rate card. So the whole idea is that this is a whole system that is basically my foundation, and when you look at radionic machines and the procedures, it's almost identical to what would be a typical, quote, magical ritual. Very fascinating how all this combines together, but it's a great training ground for you to understand energies and how they're set up and used. And basically, they, as I said, they are very similar. So this is a very fascinating area that you have to understand as a practitioner. You need to make sure you take steps of this. Like most people, including myself, I mean, I'm too busy working for others and doing so many other things that oftentimes I neglect my own energy. This is something I'm working diligently on training. You may be doing the same thing. You may not be protecting yourself the way you should. Maybe you're not empowering certain areas. Well, this is all part of the process that you have to be very cognizant of. You need to understand what is going on there. So, so you do things correctly. And if you make your situation worse by sucking in negative energy because you're trying to help someone, well, you have to be careful. And it's not something you can just do. You're creating it. And even if you do, quote, magical type practices, the same situation has occurred. So, and it's the same thing if someone, quote, attacks you or and so forth. Is the fact of, yes, they are cursing you, but they've also created a connection to you. That connection can then be followed back to the target where you can send their energy back and attack them as well. So that's the problem with going after people, even if you're justified, is the fact that you're creating a strong link. So you've started a battle and you better go in and fight it fully because that's the reality that's out there. So these are fascinating and interesting areas that we all have to look into and understand the bigger picture of what is going on so that you do things safely and properly. And again, you can't call yourself serious or interested in this area if you haven't trained yourself properly. If you're not part of All Access, if you're not working with radionic tech, learning, using the many tools we have, the clearing plates, the amplifying plates, all these things are created there to make these practices stronger, more efficient, and safer. That's all part of learning things from a qualified, high-level organization. And there is only one out there, and this is it. So make sure you're doing all the right stuff. Make sure you understand your machines. Nothing is neutral. The fact is when you start playing with subtle energy physics, they're like everything in life. There are potential dangers as much as it appears that these are not really super dangerous. I mean, it's not super dangerous technology, but the reason why most radionic practitioners have died young is because of the fact that most of these people that I have mentioned who died young were heavily involved in working with people to heal them from all sorts of very toxic energy fields, which in the physical are bad enough, but when you work with these toxic, dangerous energy fields in the subtle energy physics aspect, you're in a very dangerous area and you have to know what you're doing. So you have to be careful. The average person's probably not going to do a lot of that. You may help a relative or a friend, etc., but remember you're taking on that. So if you're trying to help your children, your spouse, whatever it is, who has some sort of a problem, you are taking on that problem as well. So make sure you're strengthening your own personal aura so that you can withstand the energies that are going to be coming back at you. So you have to always be putting yourself on a clearing, uncrossing rate on a machine while you're treating somebody else or sending them energies. Treatment is, again, a bad terminology referring to the physical when we are not working with the physical, and that's important to understand, both legally and to be correct. We're dealing with subtle energy physics. We're not dealing with the physical body directly like the so-called doctors do. It's important to understand that, and it's important to explain that to others if that becomes an issue or you talk about how does this work. Well, we work from the outside in, from the very essence of energy, which then is accumulated around, and like any thing, the body ultimately cures itself. You feed it with energetic vitamins or energetic assistance, and this makes it happen. Well, the regular physicians are giving you some sort of tablets or other things or medications that are directly affecting the physical body and pretty much ignoring the energy fields that the body creates. So understand that, make that clear, know your subject matter. By understanding the process, things will work better for you. Plain and simple. So with that, until next time,